Are you ready?
Starting now?
Well, now you just messed it up, you knob. God, you know that the shit that we go through for this, huh?
I know. Fuckers better appreciate it.
Right. Popular with the ladies.
When's this motherfucker gonna shut up?
Yeah, totally. This is fucking explicit now.
The explicit button. Let me use my finger.
La, 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 la.
It is time for another episode of Sober, Not Mature. And that episode starts now. All right, everyone. Welcome once again to a brand new episode of Sober, Not Mature. And guess hi there to you too. And I was just going to say, guess what? As always, we had some connection issues, so we're gonna. Yeah, and even you're cutting out a little bit, and I'm guessing it might be on my end. So, yeah, I'll try to talk and then shut up real quick, because then if you talk, then we're not talking over each other. We're going to be crystal clear.
All right then.
But yeah. So anyhow, I guess a quick note on that. We're trying to look at some other solutions, and we've got couple of challenges. Well, besides the two challenges that are talking to you.
Hi there.
Hi there. So yeah, those are our first two challenges. It's just Mike and I, but there are a couple of different things we're dealing with is connections on both ends, and whether it be the Wi-Fi or I've got weird signals here and I got an interruption to my Wi-Fi. It's a long story. There's other solutions out there that we can use, but basically we have to duct tape and fishing wire right now because of the certain connection issues. We're trying to use just our phones, not our computers, and yeah, it's all that other mess. But we actually care enough to try to look into this stuff. It was kind of funny. All the talk that we do about not caring about this stuff, it reminded me, the only difference is I want to do this where I didn't want to get sober. But it reminded me of when I was thinking about that today with all this, when we were doing this, I'm like, God damn. I'm like, when I didn't want to get sober, but I stuck around long enough. And, basically it's like now I cared and I wanted to make it right, which is kind of this. We were like, whatever happens, happens. But now, both just like last week when we were trying to record, we were both kind of beside ourselves, trying to figure out what the deal was. But yeah, so just so everyone knows.
If it makes you feel any better, I still don't give a shit.
All right. So yeah, Mike doesn't give a shit. I care a little bit. So there we are. All right. So you ready for our normal stats?
I am ready.
All right. So Instagram. So we hit earlier this week, which I look back, it was Tuesday. I think we hit 500 followers. So we are now at 575 followers on Instagram. Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of impressed with that. It's popped up by like 70. I think by the time I posted it on Tuesday, it was like 505 or 503 or something like that. So yeah, 70 some this week. Also, the number of plays with our episodes right now, we hit, of course, 300 last week. It's at 364 now. So we've had 64 individual plays so far this week, which is pretty cool. Top episode still episode number 4. That's got 47 plays. Episode 9, just the one from last week, is 33 already. And then episode 8, obviously the one right before that, is 44. So those are the latest, the last two. And then episode 4 seems to, still be our big winner. But I do have a little bit of sad news for you.
What's that?
Our demographics, they changed.
Oh, no.
So here's the thing. So we welcome everyone. We welcome all of our new listeners and all the new people that are coming in. 28% now are men. So it dropped the women down to 63%. Is there anything fun we can have with a 63?
No.
Okay. That's what I thought, but no. So here's a new rule, dudes. Keep coming. We want you to listen in. Obviously, maybe that's where we picked up. More of the dudes this week. But So here's a rule: if gentlemen, if you're going to listen, you got to bring along 2 of your female friends,
Right.
and ladies, if you're going to listen, bring along at least 1. But we get the numbers back up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So our main demographic still age-wise 45 to 59, which is about 49%. The 35 to 44 age group is 28%, and 28 to 34 are now up to 18%. And somehow, some way, we've got 1% of the 23 to 27 range. So just some interesting stuff in there. And I noticed like areas, basically U.S. majority of the listeners, I think 5%, something like that, maybe 5% from UK. In the different areas, I saw Argentina, I saw Germany, I saw a few other areas like that. So yeah, just bits and pieces of people all over the place, which again, I just, all this is fun. I mean, it's I keep an eye on these analytics and all these little statistics, and it just again, it's fun for me. But the website too, once again, not a lot of traffic. It doesn't seem on the website, which again is fine. We're gonna keep the website. We've got everything set up there for a year. We want to use that and continue to use that going forward, maybe for some other things, but one way or the other, people are listening, which is that's the main goal and the main point. So obviously a lot of fun there. So one other thing I want to mention, and I posted it up on Instagram the other day. Obviously, we're still looking to, if people are interested, we still have the sponsor page. Feel free, message us. We'll do whether you want to do a little write up, we can read it on the podcast. We'll add it to our sponsor page. We still have the Keating Center up there, which is the sober living facility that Mike and I went through. And I reached out to the other individual that we have up there, which is once again Alcohol Free Mom, which is THEAF mom.com. And I just checked with her to see if she's seen any increase, and she's struggling a little bit with trying to grow her thing. So visit her website, go visit her chat space, and once again it's THEAFMOM.com. That'll get you to all her stuff, and she is still listed on our sponsor page, and we're going to keep her there. So
Cool.
anyone else that's interested in doing that, once again, just a collaboration. We're looking at growing all these things together, and we're more than happy to promote you if you're willing to promote us. Basically, that's what we're looking at. So yeah, that's the little stats and little tricks and all that stuff. But I have some notes on things, that at least some ideas, a couple of suggestions that came in from people over the week. But anything particular on your mind before I point out some of these things, or how you look at it?
I'm looking good. I will say I didn't get to share this with you when we if you listen to last week's episode, we went down to Dr. Bob's house, and our guide, somebody had posted something about Dr. Bob's, and I posted the picture of me on Dr. Bob's toilet, and just said, hey, I was there yesterday too. And our guide saw that and wrote a nice little comment to me, and now we're pals on FaceSpace.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That guy was fun too. I mean, obviously, like you said, I mean, not only spent a lot of time with us, but was a nice guy, and obviously one of us. So that's awesome. And what a small world. So he just ended up seeing your comment based on somebody else saying that they were at Dr. Bob's.
Yep, that was it. Yeah, and then he sent me a friend request, and I told him to listen to the episode because we talked about him a little bit.
And said nothing. Well, God. Now he's going to hear what I said about him. God,
yeah, I know. That's why I did it.
Oh, well, you know what? He's not going to be the first person I probably pissed off. Maybe not even today. I might have pissed off somebody else today too. But
right.
Yeah. So okay. Well, no, that's cool though. For a minute there, I felt a little bit of shame and regret, and it's gone. It's gone now, so I'm cool.
Yeah. Well, no, but you ended up saying that you got a little information and it was all good. It was just you. It was you, not him.
Right, but I did call him a motherfucker though. I'm
sure that's not the first time that's happened either.
I know it's not. It wouldn't have been the first time for me. That much I know too. So,
absolutely.
All right. Well, that's cool. That's awesome, because I mean, anything like that. It's I mean, obviously a small world in general, but that's what the cool thing about this is that. I mean, all these different things, especially I think back to, the pandemic, and I wrote about this in think I wrote about this on our website or on the webpage in the little ramblings thing, is that
Mhm.
when the pandemic and stuff started, it was, I mean, everyone in the world had to adjust, but I think it was so cool how well the recovery community adapted to that. And if you
Mm.
if you think about it, not just the Zoom meetings, but I think there was three, if not four, sober Facebook pages that I joined, and I think you joined
Yeah, a
all
couple
of
of them.
them. Yeah, you hit me with one, and I'm like, oh, join this one, and then that one. So just all this stuff with the ability to continue what we're doing, through obviously social media and technology. It's cool. And I tell you, I think I said it before, but man, anyone who who has a sobriety date from like March of 2020 through certainly through
Right.
the rest. I mean, when that's their sobriety date, oh my gosh, I give you all the credit in the world because, man, I know when I came in, I lived by that fellowship. I really, really did. So
Hmm.
to be able to, to catch on to this thing and hang on to it and stay sober through that, and you talk about badass. Those are some badass people in my mind. So,
Yes, they are.
but it made me think about the when I just mentioned fellowship too. I pulled out my big book before, the one that Mike got me with the nice little cover on it, because I remembered that I had some notes in there, almost like bookmarks in my big book. So
Hmm.
maybe if we're a little bit later and as we're talking here, I'll go through and I read through some of the things. They're kind of cool. They mention the absolutes are mentioned in there, but also some other things about notes that I made for groups. But it made me think too, because I've got my name written in the front of that book. Do you remember? And I don't know if you and I were even talking at that point. I couldn't, I mean, I told the story about me not being able to walk. I couldn't write either.
Right.
Whatever was going on, I couldn't physically, I couldn't print, I couldn't write. And I kept practicing my name on a notepad because I wanted to put my name and my sobriety date in my big book and also in my 24-hour book. And I look at it now, and I mean, my printing in there looks decent enough, but some
Hmm.
of the dates on there are like the date of my notes are like May 3rd, May 4th. And it was at least a couple of weeks until I could write legibly. So
Right.
that may have been, I mean, these notes in here might have been that 2 weeks or whatever until I could actually write.
Mm.
So just weird stuff. They were talking about the podcast I listened to. They were talking about detox and that sort of thing, which also made me think about that on the way home. But that's why I grabbed my big book. But
Yeah.
so a couple of things I thought about. We did have a couple of suggestions, but do you want to? And we've been talking about it. We mentioned the four absolutes quite a few times, I think, in a couple of different episodes. Do you want to
Hmm.
go and I'll let you do it. I mean, I've had experience with it, but explain what the absolutes are, how they were presented to us, and I don't know, maybe even what they still mean to you. I know they still mean a lot to me, but um,
Right.
let's get into a little discussion about that because I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't even know what they are, let alone use them.
Right. Right. Well, as we were reminded last week, the absolutes come from the Oxford Group, which was a Christian fellowship that Dr. Bob's wife dragged him to. The absolutes are, there's four of them. It's unselfishness, honesty, purity, and love. And the way they're presented to us was we need to, in everything we're doing, we need to run what we're doing through the absolutes. Is it honest? Is it pure? Is it unselfish? And is it loving? And wow, I'm getting a big echo again.
Are you really? I mean, I don't hear it on my end, so maybe it'll come up on the recording, maybe not.
Right. Anyway, so yeah, the absolutes. We run through that and everything we do. Is it honest? Is it pure? Is it loving? Is it unselfish? I still do that. The absolutes are an important part. It is a very Cleveland centric thing. There's a pamphlet. If you write to the Cleveland Central Office of Alcoholics Anonymous, you can get that pamphlet. I don't know. I think it costs under $1, if I remember correctly. And it's a whole thing. the 12 and 12, which is the 12 traditions and 12 steps, the book that Wilson wrote after he wrote the big book. Quite often there are groups that are study the 12 and 12. And the 12 and 12 that I went to for years was 12, 12, and 4. We did the 12 steps, then we did the 12 traditions, then we did the 4 absolutes. And then when we finished that, we'd start over again. And I did that every Saturday pretty much for about 6 years. And I learned a lot. I don't go anymore because I barely go to meetings anymore. But yeah, the absolutes are a big part of my program. Honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love.
Yeah, and I remember that meeting too, and that's one. That was a Saturday meeting. I remember you and I.
Yeah.
I know you went there more than I did, but then you and I started going on Saturday. Was it Saturday? What time was it then?
It was Saturday afternoon. I think it was like 4 o'clock.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because it was still because I know that I used to go to Stella on Saturday night. Also for a while. Well, and I went there. That's where my dad got sober.
Right.
So that was kind of close to my heart and stuff. But yeah, I remember that meeting. It was great. I forgot about that it was a 4. The 12, 12, and 4. But it was great. Yeah, it's just a big. Other meetings do a rotation of the steps, but yeah, to do that whole mix in there, it was great. And we would sit down sometimes. I remember. And we're like, damn it, we haven't been in like however long it had been. We're back on like the same step. And we're like, where are the absolutes coming up, man? It's like, well, if you show up every week, right?
Right.
But yeah, and here's the funny part. The other thing I thought about with the absolutes, and it was, I don't think we could have been more than, again, back 30 days sober. So it was really new. Maybe it was even a couple of weeks, but I was down at Mom's and Kathy was there. And I remember her and I standing outside in Mom's driveway. And of course, I mean, she knew how, just pissy I was, going in there. And yeah, I mean, imagine that, right? But so she knew how pissy I was. But we started going to these, obviously the groups and everything like that. And we had gotten this introduction already to the absolutes. And that's one of the notes that's written in my big book too, I've got it written down. And Tom, I've got it written, Tom, remember the judge, Tom?
Sure.
I won't say his, yeah. So it was his meeting. I think it was his meeting because I had his name on there. But the only way I could remember it, now I'm an abbreviation, type of person. So I just said HUPPLE in my mind, which is honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. And my sister, she's just like, I'm like, yeah, we learned about this. And I'm like, wait a second. I said, it's HUPPLE. And then I had to say, and she's like, wait, what? So every once in a while, over the years, I brought that up and she's like, oh yeah, that's the HUPPLE thing, right? And I'm like, yeah, it is. But the funny part is that I'm talking about these things and she's like, so just a week ago, she's like, whatever it was, like I was mad or I was angry. And she's like, you kind of seem like you're into this a little bit. I'm like, I don't even know what my answer was, but if nothing else, it intrigued me. And the other thing that I think is important is, and I think the gentleman at Dr. Bob's house said it, is that a lot of times with the newer guys, and I remember us being told this, they're like, if all these 12 steps things and all these other things are too much, just focus on these. And I think that was a thing for a while in the way back, where they would just have guys, for the first however long, just focus on the absolutes. And really, if you think about it, and I don't mean you, but I mean if the folks listening, if you think about that from that standpoint, like Mike said, run everything through there, whatever you're going to do, and it doesn't matter, test it. And you could easily say, I mean, you may stop at honesty.
Right.
I can stop. Yeah, I could easily stop it on honesty and like, damn it, but is it unselfish? Now I'm doing it for my own purpose. And then, the other things in there, and if you can run it through there, and like the gentleman at Dr. Bob's house said, he's like, usually you can figure out if you're making a good decision or not.
Right.
So, and it's if all else fails, run it through there. And if you don't force it through, and if you're honest with yourself, you're probably going to be making at least a relatively good decision, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was funny when I moved back here, and I thought about that too, and I wanted to talk a little bit about when I first moved back here. But when I did move back here, I think I know you had asked me, or I brought it up at a meeting, and I know you and I talked about it. But
Hmm.
the people in Wisconsin had no idea what the
Right.
absolutes were. None.
Hmm.
Nobody had ever heard about it. Nobody.
Right.
So, and it was one of those things. So to kind of step back, and we were talking about it in the last episode, when I moved back to Wisconsin, and then Mike stayed in the house, and then he got the other house, and then bought his house that he's in now. But when I moved back here, I ended up taking a job, and I was 3 years and 4 months sober. I think 3 years and 4 months or 3 months when I moved back here.
Hmm.
Um, and I had a decent foundation, but our sponsor told us, and everyone else is like, get to a meeting right away, find meetings, do this, do that, don't get out of your
Right.
routine. And I'm like, okay. So and I did. My son was in Ohio at that time for a vacation that week. I drove back. I was staying with my stepsister and her husband and family because the place that I was moving into wasn't available for like 2 weeks. So I just packed up the shit in my car and I went because I had stuff in storage
Hmm.
still here from when my rental house was emptied out when I was taking the detox. That's a whole
Right.
nother story.
Uh-huh.
But in the way that I found that apartment, do you remember how I ended up getting that apartment?
Not a clue.
Okay, so when I came up, I interviewed for this job, they wanted me to start. I literally, it was like within 30 days of my interview, I started, so it was quick. And
Right.
it's like as soon as I got offered the job, I made a trip up to Wisconsin. I did just a short trip, but relatively. I think I took a half day on Friday in this back and forth whirlwind trip. And my son and I drove up to a town outside of Madison because I had looked it up and we looked at an apartment. So they hadn't told me anything about any restrictions with credit scores or anything like that. And at that time, I hadn't used any credit in years, but
Right.
I had just bought a car. I just bought this car, so I was building my credit back. But based on what my credit score was, there was a criteria, which they didn't tell me. So I drove all the way to Wisconsin. We go and look at this apartment. It's not really, probably a little bit out of my price range, but I'm like, it's close and this and that. So I get back to Ohio and I find out that they're like, yeah, you don't qualify. I'm like, what do you mean I don't qualify? I'm like, dude, man, I gotta move. I gotta be there in literally 2 weeks,
Right. Right.
That story sounds familiar from when we got kicked out
It
of
does. Uh-huh.
and it is what happened. But then I had this thought. I'm like, as other people had told me this about calling the central office, for meetings, but I'm like, God, I wonder. So I call the central office in Madison, which is where I was moving to, and I'm just like, hey, here's my deal, and that. Give her all the details, give her the credit score, give her all this different stuff. I'm like, this is what I got to do. She's like, you know what? She goes, I know. She goes, one of the people in the program, she said, is a really good friend of mine, and she's one of the representatives at a management company. She goes, I'll put you in touch with her. I'm like, really? So she contacts her. I call this lady, so she knows my whole deal, and she sends me this list of, I think it was 4 different places. And she said, as long as you don't have an eviction or any judgments against you, which I did not, she goes, you got your pick up whatever one you want. So that's how I got my apartment, because of, not only because I'm sober, but literally because of central office. AA is the reason I got my apartment, which is staggering. Now,
Right.
the funny part is,
you reached out, though. You didn't keep
Right.
your problem to yourself. You reached out and asked for help.
yeah. And that's what we were told, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to point that out.
No, I know. I was being sarcastic. Sorry about that.
I know.
But no, you're
really.
but yeah, that's what we were taught. But I mean, just the same thing. Like when you and I got our place, I mean, I'm freaking out. But here's the other funny part, that the place I ended up moving into, I only stayed there a year because not only were the other people smoking weed, I mean, they were smoking some fucking weed in this building. There's a 4-family, so I mean, the whole place smelled like weed all the time. Then they started dealing. So and again, I got this apartment through the hands of AA, and
Right.
I'm in a fucking drug house, But anyhow, but so when I first got back, so I'm staying with my stepsister and her family, and I get in probably on a Thursday, maybe it was a Friday. I don't even know. I think it was a Friday. So that day, I went in. I grabbed a pizza. I remember going right to Little Caesars, and I grabbed a pizza. Went back to their
Uh-huh.
house. They had me all set up. Next morning, I hit the road and I go to Madison. I do some sightseeing. I go figure out where the office is, and I start looking for meetings. And I went to a meeting that afternoon. I went to a meeting that night. So two on Saturday. This is my first day in town. Sunday, I went to the same meeting I went to Saturday, and I continued to go to that meeting the entire time I was in Madison.
Right.
And every single day after work, I'd go to that meeting. Now, there was one little glitch. I started traveling because I was in the training department. But when I traveled, I found meetings where I traveled, and I'd go to meetings then. Now, going to the Friday meeting got to be a little difficult because I was usually traveling back from someplace. But then Saturday and Sunday, I go to a meeting. So I was going to more meetings then at 3 years and 3 months sober than I'd gone to in the previous probably 2 years.
Right.
But it was different place. I wasn't really uncomfortable, but I guess I was, because I remember that was the first place that I had on my own when I was
Mhm.
sober.
Right.
And I'm what feels like a million miles away from you guys,
Mhm.
all my support folks. In Madison, I got nobody to be accountable for except for me.
Right.
So and then I start traveling, and there's fucking mini bars. You remember me telling you about that?
Oh yeah.
I go, first hotel I go to, this nice hotel, and I walk in, checking in, and the guy's like, "Here's your key, and here's for the fridge," and I'm like, "You can keep that one." And he's like, "Oh, don't want to tempt yourself." I'm like, "No, I just don't need it."
Right.
So I'm like, cool. I'm walking all proud up to my room. I walk in the door, and I bought some soda. I open up the fridge, and it's full of fucking beer and wine.
Right.
the, the key was for the hard liquor. There's
Mm.
still a fridge full of beer and wine. I'm like, whatever, man. I just shoved my soda in there. But for a week 4 days that I was in there, I had a fridge full of booze.
Right.
And it made me, it made me mildly uncomfortable, but obviously I didn't drink it,
Mhm.
so I had to, deal with that traveling sort of thing right away. But my point with that is that I just dug myself into meetings again. And it reminded me too, when I went down to Florida, and that was 6 years ago now, maybe
Mhm.
5.
Right.
I went down to, Florida with my cousins. I was helping them out. I was down there for 3 weeks. And again, at that point, I was going to one, maybe 2 meetings a week here.
Mhm.
When I was in Florida, I was there for 21 days. There was only 3 days that I didn't go to a meeting. The first night that I was there, one other night when Kathy came down for the weekend, and then one other night might have been the day I left. Every
Right.
other day, I went to meetings. Now, my cousins know my deal, very supportive. And I
Mhm.
honestly, I never saw them drink the entire time I was there. They had a separate part, like a guest house that I could stay in, or like a little apartment thing. But if they drank, they didn't make a big deal out of it. But the same thing, I was in a different place, and I went back. It's like, go back to this, go back to my
Yeah.
roots.
Go back to the basics. Yep.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. But I am there's some we talk about all these stories and all these things we went through, and I bitched so much, and I can still bitch about a lot of things to this day. But man, I mean, all the things that that we were lucky enough to be presented with, the people and the things and the way that we were
Mhm.
taught. I mean, all of it's like breathing. I don't think about it anymore. That's what I
Right.
do. And I know you're the same way. I mean, it's what
Mhm.
it is. It's what we do. So, man, debt of gratitude to the Keating Center. I can't say enough about them. I know Mike is the same way. I mean, we're both kind of preaching to the choir between the two of us with that.
Right.
But um, and that's the other thing too. I've had a couple of different sober living facilities connect with me, and I reached out to a couple of them. I'm like, those are the ones too. If we can, I'd love to support. And I don't care where these places are. I'd love
Right.
to be able to, support and have those places on our sponsor page, just because I think it'd be. I don't know. I love supporting them because I know what it did for us, and I know what it could do for other people. So.
Mhm.
But so one other thing too that came up, and this was a suggestion that came in. Just this guy sent me a message on it. He was talking about boundaries. How we deal with setting boundaries and learning to say no, and not necessarily always be a people pleaser. Do you
Right.
have thoughts on either one of those, and like how you are now versus how you were? Because I'm far different on that now than I was when we first got sober. But you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. uh, yeah, well, people pleasing, I mean, in early recovery, you better try to please the people that you're around. You know, hopefully you're around people that are sober and trying to help you become sober. Yeah, I definitely wanted to please those people. I wanted to show them I was serious. Um, but so much now, not too much. No. Yeah, I don't care. You know, I have a way of life that works for me, and I don't really give a shit one way or another what anyone thinks of it. I really don't. You know, the for decades, you know, my rock and roll lifestyle, and you got to be cool, and you got to, you know, project a certain thing. I'm me now. You know, I have found me by working this program, by working the steps, and I'm comfortable with me, and I don't care what anyone thinks about me today. I really don't. I really don't. Again, I'm comfortable. I have that peace and that serenity that they promised me, and you know, what someone thinks of me, I would hope that someone would look at the way I live and the way I conduct myself and go, hey, that's he's living the right way, you know, 90% of the time. But you know, that would be nice. But again, that doesn't matter either, because I know I'm doing the next right thing. I'm being a good boy, and that's all that matters to me. What
Well,
about you?
and you know, with the boundaries thing like that, and especially the people pleasing, I can still be as much shit as I talk sometimes. I mean, I could still be a people pleaser depending on the individual. You know, like when it comes to, I mean, maybe they know it, maybe they don't, but I mean, especially my son's mom, I would do anything for her. I would
Sure.
seriously, I would, you know, because I think that, well, I enjoy her as a person, but I also think that I owe her. Same thing with my kids, you know,
Right.
but I think most people would with their kids, but maybe we feel more if we're still feeling a little bit of that, you know, that guilt and that sort of thing that we get sometimes, you know, but or when it comes to somebody in, you know, if it's a, you know, a significant other or even somebody of the opposite sex that you're trying to please. And I don't mean, and I only laugh because I'm not trying to say it that way, but I mean, especially when you get to know somebody,
Right.
you know, it's a lot of that because I want, you know, you want the best for yourself, but you also want the best for the other person. But especially the deeper I care about somebody, the more I would do for them. And
Right.
I was telling this person that I've been talking to recently, which you know who she is, and I'm not going to out
Right.
her on here, but I I had told her, I said because we talked on the phone quite a bit when I was driving out to Ohio and down to Indiana. I mean, and I'm not a phone talker, and I told her that I'm like, okay, here's the deal. I said there's a few people that I'll always answer the phone for. I said my kids. Hopefully that goes without saying, but my kids always. You know, the situation right now, I mean, you know, and our mom has got some of the, you know, some health things going on. I'm not going to get into
Right.
that, but I would always answer her call or Kathy's phone call. But Kathy
Right.
knows, and she's not going to get offended by this if she listens, that there was plenty of times that I just let it go to voicemail
Right.
because I don't feel like talking to her, you know. But again, I become better with that. But I told her, I'm like, obviously you, Mike. I mean, I would never ignore your phone call. I'd answer it in a heartbeat. And then, you know, I told her, I said,
Only because you know me well enough that if I'm calling, it's important.
usually, but you've surprised me every once in a while. Like, hey man, haven't caught up in a while. Let's talk. And I'm like, who the fuck is this? But yeah, usually you and I will do the same thing. Hey, you know, you're going to be around tonight. I'm going to shoot you a call. We kind of give each other a heads up first.
Yeah, right.
But then, you know, I told her, I'm like, well, you made the list, you know, because I told her that, you know, but I mean, I enjoy this individual. But the other thing that came up was, I mean, this thing we're doing, and she listens to this, which is still kind of funny to me because I was joking with her and I told you the same thing. I'm like, think about this, you know, you get, I mean, there's nobody else in my life that's ever known so much about me in such a small period of time. I mean,
Right.
we've laid our lives out here. and she still talks to me. So I mean, that's but the whole thing with boundaries, I know right away in the beginning, I wouldn't say no to anything or anybody because I felt that I didn't have the right to. I felt I owed people. Oh, Marty, I would never say no to.
Right.
Or anything that, if a deer, well, Marty specifically, there's other people that I would say no to in the program, but Marty, I wouldn't. I've never said no to him.
Right.
But in the beginning, I felt this monstrous obligation, and that can get weird sometimes. It can also be unhealthy on any level. But I mean, especially in the beginning, because we're trying to get better and take care of ourselves. And like you said with the gentleman that wanted to go back and read his big book, Phyllis is like, no, you got to relax, man.
Right.
So the people pleasing is something I still need to be mindful of because it's kind of the way I'm wired. But to your point too, and I love the way you said that, is you don't care, what people think about you. And I've gotten to that comfort level probably, it's been in I know for a fact, the last handful of years. And
Sure.
I mean, I'm not some, workout dude. I don't have a perfect body. I don't give a flying fuck how, what people think. I'm like, this is me,
Yep.
And whenever I meet people, if it's somebody that I feel is worth my time, worth for me to tell it, I'll tell them my story. I'm sober,
Right.
I'm this and this. And if people don't want to accept it, okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah. Have a nice day.
Yeah. Do you remember too? I think we were talking about this last weekend. I think we were with Michael at the meeting when we used to say that to people. Like if I don't know, whatever we were doing, we'd like, this helps us stay sober. And people were like in the beginning, oh, okay, no, we understand. And that was almost a weird, like, almost, I don't know, like a key to something. I'm like, wait a second, all I got to say is it helps me stay sober and I can do whatever I want. And it almost got my head that way because I mean that's when it's like we were like super new, and I'm like, I can't think that way. I remember saying that to Dawn a couple of times I don't remember what it was, but yeah, then I'm like, no, I can't use this stuff for evil. I got to use it for
right. Yeah. Well, we spent our entire lives being manipulators. We're our first instinct is to manipulate our sobriety.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Use it to our advantage. Right. So that reminded me of this too. And I think I've told you this before, but just yet another thing that Dawn said to me that I'll never forget. I think it was right after I got my first real job. I worked at that factory for however long it was, a couple of weeks.
Right.
And then I got my first real job back in the field of business that I'm in. And I think me and Tom went someplace. It was like a Friday night. It was warm out. We were free, And I think I had to have been 4 or 5 months sober at the time. And I had called to talk to my son, and she answered the phone, and she's like, "Oh, he was with his friends or with another family member, whatever it was. He wasn't there."
Sure.
So I'm like, "Oh," I said, I told her I got the job, and she said, "Well, that's good." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I just got, I don't know, 5 months. Let's say I'm 5 months sober." And she's like, "Oh, okay. Well, talk to me in a year."
Right.
And in my head, I'm like, well, okay. She wants me to tell her when I get my year, right? So my year comes along, and I'm like, hey, guess what? I'm a year sober. And she's like, talk to me at 2 years. And then it clicked. I'm like, fuck. So her whole point, but she said it to me before, just keep doing what you're doing. You're fine. You don't do what you're doing. We're done. We're done.
Right.
You're done with your son. You're done. But it was funny that the one time, and I think it was at the 5-year thing. It might have been the margarita day. But it was I was at their house, and my son was sitting there again, probably playing on his phone, and I'm like, hey, it's just my anniversary. I got 5 years, and I'm kind of like poking him. And then she said to him, she's like, tell your dad congratulations. She said, 5 years, that's a big deal. That meant so much to me,
Right.
And she has said congratulations since. She doesn't make a big deal out of it. She knows roughly as it comes up when my anniversary is. But that time, just for her to say that, I was like, damn, that was cool, But yeah, she just kept talking to me at a year.
Yeah. But it wasn't the year. It wasn't 2 years. It was, don't fucking tell me, show me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't understand that until then. that's that's why I can laugh about it so much now, and that's what we were talking about that one episode. There's got to be, and I now it doesn't bother me, but like I said, it did. But I'm happy that people would still look and say, okay, and they realize that we're not done yet. That
Right.
And I've said it before, and whenever it was brought up to me at one point, when somebody's like, "Yeah, man, you really got this thing," and it freaked me out, and I'm like, "Me, don't." And I'm like, I've said that since then. I'm like, I don't ever want somebody to say that to me. Don't ever tell me that I got something, because then I'm going to get fucking lazy, and I won't want to, and I won't mean to. But if somebody's like, "I got, you got this," I'm like, in my head, I'm like, cruise control.
Right.
So, no, I want to keep seeking. I want to keep learning. I want to remain teachable, right? As they say.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so yeah, that was the boundaries thing. There was one other one on here. What about oh, you know what we never talked about? We kind of stepped back into like some of the evilness when we were drinking. Did you, and I don't remember, did you ever get a DUI?
No. Nope, they never caught me.
Well, and I know that. That's what I was just going to say. You're like, yeah. Well, and I only got caught once, but that was. Do you know Well, fuck it. Even if you know it, why don't I just tell it? Because this was a trip, and I think I mentioned it in one of the other episodes. But so I got my DUI in. Oh shit! It's actually coming up May. I'll never forget the date. The next year was my divorce date. It was May 22nd of 94, and May 22nd of 95 is when my first divorce was final. It's just weird. But my ex and I, so my daughter's mom and I, split up on the 1st of April. So yeah, April Fool's Day. And I remember, I mean, it was actually, it's one of those moments. It was a rough day for both of us, but we didn't belong together, and shit happened and all that stuff. But it didn't get any easier for a long time, and certainly not early like that. And I moved in with a couple of buddies of mine, and at that point I was drinking like crazy. When I got my DUI, I know now that I had a drinking problem. I don't know, maybe I was an alcoholic, but I certainly, no doubt, I had a drinking problem. That much I know. So I go out, and the company I was working for was a Sunday. They had this softball thing, just a company thing, and it was keg of beer, it was food. It was in May, so it was actually really nice out. So we were playing softball all day, drinking all day, and after all said and done, me, one of the guys I worked with, and his girlfriend, they're like, "Hey, let's go down to the lakefront." I'm all up for it. We stopped and got a 2-liter bottle of Coke and a big monster bottle of rum. This is after drinking all day.
Sure.
We sat at the lakefront, waited for the sun to go down, and I remember trying to walk to my car, and I was stumbling. So I'm driving home from downtown Milwaukee, and I lived out in Waukesha, which was a ways, and I'm fading on the highway, and I remember this. And my bright idea is to get off the highway, because I'm like, ooh, I should get off the highway. So I get off the highway, and from that point to where this incident happened it couldn't have been more than a mile. But I passed out, and I ran off the road and hit a 4x4 sign with my car. So it hit it, went back into the roof of the car, it dented the car. I was driving this old 81 Oldsmobile Delta 88, this big old boat. That's probably the only reason that nothing worse happened to the car.
Right.
I pull in, and at that point, it's where the electric company out here is, their parking lot. I don't even know what time it was, but I'm sitting there. I know how to change a tire, but apparently at that point I didn't. because I'm trying to change the tire. Not only does a cop show up, but an ambulance shows up, because clearly somebody saw, that I hit something.
Right.
And so a couple of things. I'm loaded. That's number one. I've got an open beer in my car, because of course I was drinking in the car on top of that.
You got to stay hydrated.
Right. It was hot out. It was. And on top of that, when I bought this car, I couldn't afford to get it registered. So I just took the plates I had from my old car and put it on there. So I got the wrong plates on the car.
Of course.
So all three of these things, this guy does the whole, he didn't even try to do a field sobriety test. I was fucking loaded.
Right.
So my blood alcohol level is like 0.24 or something like that. Is crazy. And So that's how I got my DUI and ended up, going through the whole thing, losing the license, whatever. But to your point, that's the only time I got caught.
Right.
And I didn't learn my lesson. The only thing that I did for a little bit after that is I didn't drink and drive. I still drank
Oh yeah.
a lot. And the same thing too. I went through the drunk classes, and you're supposed to not drink during those classes. And we used to have them on. Right. You're supposed to have it, or we had one like during the week and then one on a Saturday. And I remember both times, usually I'd leave the meeting on, let's say it was a Wednesday night, I'd have to leave work early to go to the meeting. And then after the meeting, I'd stop at the grocery store and buy beer. On Saturdays, I'd stop at the grocery store and buy beer. I never stopped drinking, while I was doing that.
Mm-mm.
And the funny thing is, thinking back now, the lady, and these are all recovery people that are doing these classes.
Sure.
And the lady that led our class, after all said and done, obviously she's trying to get all of us to admit that we have a problem with alcohol, which I was not not even close to being ready to admit. But she's asking everyone at the end, asking everyone's plan. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And I'm blah, 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 this. And she's like, so everybody, apparently Bill's going to try to control his drinking.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, you fucking whore.
Right. How
She was
dare
right.
you call me on my shit?
Right. But the thing of it is, I was not even close. That was 1994. I got sober in 2010.
Right.
I wasn't close to being done. But I think back at it now and I laugh because man, she was trying to do all the right things. But man, no way. You couldn't talk to me, so.
No, of course not. No, because we're too damn smart, man. We're going to figure out a way to get around this. Yeah, and
right.
we tried for years.
Yeah, it didn't quite work. It didn't quite work at all. So another thing that comes up a lot, and you and I think talked about this briefly last weekend, but didn't really talk about it completely. This comes up a lot, and I see it on Instagram, and I also see it. They talk about it on the podcast. So non-alcoholic beverages or zero proof or anything like that. Your opinions or just any thoughts you have on any of that. I mean, I've got mine too, but just curious.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, with everything else, if you can do it, go ahead. Good for you. I don't know how you could get a whiskey to be non-alcoholic, or any other, a gin. There's non-alcoholic beer. Yes, I love the taste of beer, but I love the effect more. I at the end, my go-to drink was vodka and grapefruit juice, and I remember very early on, Marty at the Keating Center, within the first month, he had put out some grapefruit flavored Kool-Aid or something, and I took a sip of it, and I couldn't drink it. It was too new and quite frankly, I don't think I've drank grapefruit juice in the last 12 years. I haven't. Orange juice is about as close as I can get these days. There's no point. There's plenty of other things to drink. I drink tea and I drink water and I drink juice and yeah. I don't see any point in drinking a non-alcoholic beer. Yes, I like the taste. I lost the privilege. I like to say, I drank my lifetime supply of alcohol by the time I was about 25, and I didn't get sober until I was 43. So,
so yeah, you got your.
Yeah. I mean, and I like the taste of whiskey too. I really did. Bourbon was when I had money was what I drank. And I just don't have any desire to try to replicate that. What the hell's the point?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and what's funny about that? And as soon as you mentioned that Kool-Aid, and I don't know if it was the same Kool-Aid, but at the Keating Center for all you guys out there, what used to happen, and it was actually kind of fun. You get like these weird mixes of it, but I mean that's what Marty would have. The coffee would go away during the day most of the time, and he would have Kool-Aid out there, and we'd make this big freaking container of it, and usually what would happen is you put like 3-4 different packets, different flavors, and then just some godly amount of sugar. And most of the time it was good, but I did the same thing. I took a drink of it. And I don't remember what alcoholic beverage it reminded me of, but I couldn't drink it. And then Mom one time bought me, and it was on sale because I used to like, and I still do, but I just don't drink it that much anymore. I like root beer, and she bought, and it was Barks root beer. So A&W doesn't bother me, and then I've had other types of root beer, but Barks root beer reminded me of. It had that little hint of Captain Morgan or the off-brand of Captain Morgan, whatever that was. So I took one drink out of it. Like I can't drink this. I took it. I took it to the Keating Center. I'm like, send anyone to me, it reminds me of booze, but maybe you'll want this.
Right.
But so and I was thinking of it too from an AA standpoint. I mean, if we ever walked into, some of our, like, especially our old home group, down in the basement of that church with a non-alcoholic beer, we'd probably get our asses kicked. I mean, because the mindset of the AA is no alcohol at all. Now, again, you and I are of the same opinion. I don't have a problem with it, but we've talked to people that are that are running the same path or have run the same path as us. And if nothing else, I mean, I think it could be a dangerous situation for certain people. But like again, the podcast I listened to, she was a hard liquor person, never drank beer. So she drinks NA beer and she likes mocktails. So that's where they talk about it a lot, so, and they do have, and I don't get it either, but apparently some of these, and I'm saying quote unquote spirits, you can get the whiskey or the bourbon or things like that. But here's the other thing. So I've been at plenty of like work events and things like that where people, and I've seen sober people, they'll get a glass of like tonic water and they get a lime in and things like that. Sometimes people will do it to make it look like they're drinking. And I've never been, again, whatever people want to do that. I don't do it because I don't trust my mind still to this day. If I'm pretending, or if I'm drinking a non-alcoholic or something that reminded me of that, it's like decaf coffee. I don't get, like you said, you don't get the point.
Right.
I don't get the point either. Non-alcoholic beer, sooner or later, I'm going to want the real thing because of the effect. If I drink decaf, I do like the taste of coffee, but I want to get buzzed up too on coffee. And it always reminds me of the old meme. It's like trying to go find a hooker who just wants to cuddle. I mean, what's the point? So I was just curious because I thought you and I were on the same page with that. And the individual that, again, I keep talking about, the California one, she's the one that brought up that because I asked her for suggestions to talk about. And she said, same thing as you and I are talking about. She goes, I don't give a shit. She's like, I can't do it. I don't do it.
Right.
Same reasons and pretty much same mindset as you and I. But she goes, I don't understand why people get so bent out of shape about it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't. I just don't get it. It's not my deal, but I'm not going to get mad at somebody if they roll up with a non-alcoholic beer. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Right. But good for you. Yeah. It's, it's everything else. Real alcohol and I've been around people that smoking pot and stuff, and it's like, fine, yes, you can do that. I'm in social situations, I'll be at a party or something, and people, hey, you want to hit? No thanks. And that's it. I just, I don't need to explain myself. Just no, I don't want any. Right. And the reason is I can't. Because if I smoke pot, I'm going to get thirsty. That's what it does. It gives you cotton mouth. So then I'm going to have a drink, and then I'm going to shoot heroin. So,
well, and that's the exact story that I was talking about when we were talking last week about the 3/4 house. The guy was telling me, he went out and had a few beers, and he ended the day with a needle in his arm, and that's what we were taught. That regardless of what you do, you're going to come back to your drug of choice, whether it be whether it's whiskey or whether it's heroin or cocaine or crack or whatever the deal is, you're going to go back to that, or pill. So yeah, I don't, and I'm one, and I know you will eat foods that are cooked in alcohol. I don't,
Right.
and I don't think I'm going to get drunk off of it. But again, it goes back to me. I don't want to get this mindset. I don't want to have the taste. Because I used to joke about it, but then, it kind of stuck with me. Well, first of all, my dad was like that. So I learned that from him back from
Mhm.
when I was younger, when he didn't have anything like that. But the other thing too, I started thinking about, I'm like, man, if I can eat a hamburger that's made, like a Jack Daniel's burger, whatever the hell they're
Right.
bourbon burgers or all this shit, bourbon steaks. I'm like,
Mhm.
if I can justify having my steak cooked in whiskey, why not have a glass to go along with it? Or if I can have, like Wisconsin, I haven't made brats since I've been sober, and I used to
Hmm.
make them with beer, and they're really fucking
Sure.
good.
Right.
And I know it. Even my son-in-law, he's a chef. And when we were talking about going to his restaurant for the first time a handful of years ago, I told him, I'm like, I said, what everything's cooked in. I said, a lot of Italian restaurant. I said, I know a lot of it's cooked with wine and alcohol. He's like, yeah.
Mhm.
He goes, I can pick out stuff, or I can cook something for you that doesn't have it. But he goes, no disrespect. And I said, I know what you're going to say, but go ahead. And he said, you realize the alcohol's cooked out. And I said, I get it. But then I explained that part. And he's like, oh, he goes, I understand. You
Mhm.
know, Kathy's 50th, when we went to that fondue restaurant.
Right.
Uh,
In Chicago. Yeah.
yeah. When the cheese came out and the lady's like, oh, this is our
The white wine. Yeah.
white wine. I didn't eat it.
Right.
And I think you pretty much had your face inside of that, but
It was delicious.
I'm sure. But yeah, then I remember Mom saying that to me. She's like, you realize there's white wine. You don't want to eat that, do you? She said that to me, and I'm like,
Mhm.
no. I said, I'm good. And I
Right.
mean, I know you're fine with it. And I
Right.
didn't look at you like, dude, what the fuck you doing, man?
Right.
It just, it's my mindset. Which again, different people have different things.
Mhm.
And I recognize the fact that it is an unrealistic, maybe even call it paranoia, but I don't care. You know,
Right. Right.
so that's kind of what I've decided to do, and I'm fine with it. And seriously, I don't know if I trust. Well, the last time I was going to say don't trust my mind, but I was
Mhm.
over. Dawn knows my deal too, and there's been a few times when we've had birthday parties for, whether it be for my son or my stepson or whatever it's been, get-togethers, and there's brats, and I'm like, are those cooked in beer? And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, believe me, I'm not going to go hungry. And then
Right.
the last time, I forget what it was. I said, is that whatever it was? And she's like, okay, that has beer in it, that doesn't. Then I went to grab some salad that she made, and she's like, and I looked at her, I'm like, did you put bacon in this? And she's like, Derek's like, she puts bacon in everything now. And she's like, but it's good. And I'm like, I'm good. And she's like, oh God, that's right, you can't eat bacon either. I'm like, I'm not going to
Mhm.
go.
Right.
So it's not just that I can't eat bacon because it'll give me monstrous heartburn, but there's more. I have more isms than just not wanting to eat food with alcohol in it. But
Right.
so, but yeah, that was just another thing, and I thought that I pretty much thought I knew your opinion on that, but it's
Mhm.
just an interesting conversation because it's a big deal now. Oh, and the other thing too, and I don't know if I told you this, but I have not been in a liquor store in years, so I don't know this to be true or untrue. But my
Mhm.
understanding is there's these whole, because there's not just people that are sober or in recovery these days. There's a
Right.
ton of these, like the alcohol free mom. I don't
Mhm.
know if she's sober or living an alcohol free life. I don't know. But there's people that do it, just they want to live alcohol free lives. They're not necessarily sober, in that quote unquote word, or in recovery. So I
Right.
guess in liquor stores now there's like entire aisles dedicated to non-alcoholic choices, which I was like,
Mm.
damn, apparently it's a big business. So when this trucking thing and the collection thing doesn't work out for me, we might be
Right.
able to sell some of this shit.
Yeah.
I hear it's big business, but that's a whole nother
Right.
conversation. But so what else? I mean, we're slowly approaching an hour here. I didn't realize that we were talking so long, but then again, I
Mhm.
never realized that we're talking so long. And I'm hoping that this recording turned out well, because I'm going to do the same thing. I don't know. Looking at the time, I'll probably, just so you know, um, I'll probably post this in the morning. I just think it gets a little bit better play. Plus, it'll give me time to make sure I get everything set right. But anything else on your mind? I mean, we talked about the absolutes and a lot of other things, but anything else on your mind?
No, I'm good, man. It's approaching 10 o'clock here in the land of Cleve, and I'm getting pretty damn tired.
Okay, cool. Well, just a quick side note: we're gonna have to, we may have to figure out something for next week, and we'll figure it out coming up. I'm
Okay.
babysitting at least for a little bit next week for the for my grandson. So I'll be up in Appleton, and depending on who knows, maybe he'll be sleeping, and I can talk my garbage while he's sleeping, but we'll see.
Or we'll just bring him on.
Yeah, get him crying. You know what? From everything that I've heard, I haven't seen him in a few weeks, but I mean, he's still pretty chill. So yeah,
Well,
he's
good.
our biggest fan. Your
We'll
biggest
just
fan.
invite him
So,
in, man. Yeah, we'll just, ask him a few questions, see how he feels about some things.
yeah. And my understanding is he's still sober, so I think we're good.
Well, good. That's good to hear.
He's got about 7 weeks now. From
Right.
what I understand. So
Well, good
Well,
for
all right,
him.
man.
We'll have to get him a chip.
yeah, we should. I should get him like a 6-month chip. That'd be kind of funny. All right, man. Well, you know what time it is. Then it's time for you to wing us out of here.
All right, man. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of Sober Not Mature. Stay sober this week. Be good to other people. Don't hurt anybody. And never forget, fuck off.
All right, man. I love you, brother.
I love you too. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
As always, thank you for listening to another episode of Sober Not Mature. To access all of our content and interact with us, please visit our website, SoberNotMature.com. Thank you again for listening, and we will talk to you soon.